everyone. This is Ashtyn Campbell here with my friend, my beautiful, beautiful friend, Adam Sanchez. Today we're going to be talking about siphoning, targeting, and alchemizing these into opportunity for upleveling. So I'm going to go ahead and let Adam just take a moment to introduce himself.
Thanks, Ashtyn. Yeah, it's great to be here. And hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. My name is Adam Sanchez. I am the creator of the company Raw Life Yoga. And I like to think of myself as a sort of Da Vinci in training. I'm so passionate about so many things. So I do a lot of things. I have a lot of hats, but mostly in the context of this video, I'm a yoga teacher, an astrologist, and a spiritual counselor. So we're going to use some of those tools to talk about these issues today. And Ashtyn, I know, has a lot of really great tools to share as well. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So just a little bit about myself as well. I'm currently working on my degree in marriage and family therapy. So I'm really interested in relational dynamics, and I have been since I was a kid. I love it. I'm also interested in shamanism. So essentially merging psychology or psychotherapy with the shamanic side of things, and also embodiment work, like somatic experiencing. So to begin our topic today, we're going to start with the siphoning and targeting. And just like kind of, bring it down to a baseline. Siphoning is going to have to do with a taking of sorts, right? A reaching for someone else's life force and taking it from them, which is very, very different experience than just being within your own sacred, regenerative life force and space. And we're going to talk about today some main areas in which both siphoning and targeting occur. And we're going to start with the beautiful form of social media. It does have its pleasures, but it certainly also has its downsides and can be a great siphoner. So for me personally, I've noticed that if I spend too much time on social media, I feel myself almost numb and lifeless, right? Like my body itself can be lifeless. And I may spend just too much time on social media to the point where I'm no longer within a creative space inside myself. I've now spent a couple hours on social media, but my creative juices have then been leaked to this social media form instead of me taking time with myself and then just creating and being expansive. And then also for, attacks, I mean, it's really direct. Facebook attacks can come quite directly from someone that you have as a friend on your feed, and an attack takes place and it doesn't feel good, right? It feels like an attack because it is. It's an attack on your spirit, your life force. And when we come into these spaces of being truly regenerative, really being in our power, we find ourselves having more and more experiences, unfortunately, with those kind of attacks. So I know there's some things that Adam has to say about technology and how it can, do its dark magic with us for siphoning. So I'm welcoming you, Adam, to, share some of your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like the dark magic term. It's not that far off, but, we can look at it in a very simply grounded perspective of understanding technology, vibration, and frequency, right? And everything in the universe vibrates at a frequency. And so does the world around us. Every person has their own frequency, right? They're happy, they're joyous. It's a pretty much higher frequency. If they're, depressed and sad, it's a lower frequency. And so the whole gamut of human experiences and emotions also fall into these categories of frequency. And you can take a look around you at the world, and you don't have to look very far to see a lot of low frequency energy, right? You call it low energy, right? Some people call it that, but it's all over. It's in the media, it's in music, it's in movies, it's on television, it's in a lot of the food that we eat even, right? It's coming at us from all these different angles. And the point that I want to make with this is to say that it is a deliberate sort of targeting, that it is designed to keep people in these lower frequencies, because it's just sort of perpetuating it, especially if, like Ashtyn was mentioning, we're kind of being siphoned and we don't feel really connected with our creative self and our creative space, we're just going to sort of fall into the environment and whatever the environment presents to us. And so, bam, we're just keeping that frequency really low. And that's one of the ways that technology can show up in terms of targeting and keeping us, in a sense, suppressed. And so that's why we're distinguishing this, so that we can liberate ourselves through this conversation.
Yeah, it's such a good point to make, that because these type of dynamics are going on and in so many different areas around us that it becomes normalized. And that's where our awareness dissipates. And that's, again, why it's important to have these type of conversations, to really bring awareness, like you were saying, to these areas, so that then we can really work consciously with what's going on and make conscious choices to take ourselves out of those dynamics and live a life that's fruitful. With technology, you had mentioned music, and of course we have lyrics that are pretty low vibe, right? And they're perpetuating the same ideas.
It's like every love song is the most codependent song in the world. I can't even listen to half of them anymore.
Exactly. And so even those lyrics within themselves can perpetuate ideas of further siphoning dynamics and attacks to normalize it, for people to even believe that this is living, like this is normal ways of relating to each other. And it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be normalized. It doesn't have to be normal. And when you take yourself out of those dynamics, it then does kind of flip on itself, and you're realizing how very abnormal and wrong it all really is. So the contrast can be a little bit much sometimes when you choose to move into a different state of being, but it really allows you to cultivate ways of being and living and experiencing and coming from very truthful, authentic realizations within yourself, to then pivot point within your own life, where you want to participate in something, where you don't. Do you want to have a codependent relationship, or do you want to create divine union? You have these different options, and sometimes I think we're so embedded in the system that all we know is codependent, so we don't know there are other options. But coming into these awarenesses allows us to really see the other side of things, and then we get to pivot point in the direction that feels most right for us.
Well said. Yeah, and you kind of touched upon it. It sounds like there's a systemic oppression that is a big part of all of this, right?
Exactly. So to kind of just notate some of these systemic oppressions, right? When we think about it, there seems to be a very linear way of living that's perpetuated upon us. Go to school.
Get married, have kids, get a picket fence, and 2 kids and a dog. And
exactly. And how, that really is attacking our own unique ways of being. Our purpose cannot be found in a linear sense of what everyone is doing. Your uniqueness is going to come from your own soul. And so these systemic oppressions that give us a story, a narrative to live by, if we so then choose, and usually from an unconscious place, to live out those stories, we find ourselves less and less and less in our own unique path and purpose, to the point where we don't even have an opportunity to discover it, because we're just playing out these roles.
Yeah, and it's such a sad thing when that happens too, because that, again, it's the self-perpetuating cycle, right? Because then everyone's just living in this little box as an automaton, not in touch with their own authentic source energy of creativity, of vitality, of life force. And then everything's all boring and the same, right? And who wants to live in that? Really, no wonder everyone's depressed all the time. So, I like to call it the narcissism, the systemic oppression, because it thrives on narcissism. And, just to explain a little bit about that, because, it's kind of a buzzword and people don't necessarily understand, what all of the signs are. And basically it comes to a total lack of self-responsibility, a total projection of one's own flaws into the environment and just basically take. They're the takers of society, right? And sometimes they may seem very charismatic and maybe even, very giving, but no, it's actually for their own sense of grandiosity that they're doing something that's supposedly generous. And so we have in our world a system that thrives on this. And one of the biggest hallmarks of this narcissistic pathology is something called gaslighting, right? It's victim blaming, calling the person crazy. Meanwhile, narcissism itself is high level crazy. Yet they use the notion of projecting that crazy onto someone else to absolve themselves of any guilt. It's like accusing the other person of the thing that which you're guilty, right? That's their favorite methodology. And that's basically what we have in the system. Oh no, there's something wrong with you if you don't want to get this 9 to 5 picket fence, and you're a dregs in society and a drag. Wait a minute. Hold on, aren't we all free? Like, isn't this a free country? But that's one of the ways that these machinations can show up in the world. And that's the reason why it can be so powerful, because it's subtle. It's a subtle manipulation, even on a psychic level. And so it's almost easy to miss. You can think, oh, wow, they're saying one thing, but they really mean another. And so that's where we can allow ourselves to be deceived. And that's basically how this whole system operates. Victim blaming, and just living to prop up its own self and not to serve, the people who are part of that system. So, inside of that, we also have targeting and codependency. I think that, the targeting is a real important topic. You mentioned it in terms of Facebook. It can happen anywhere in our lives. I think Facebook is one of the easiest places to happen. We also know that Facebook is owned by the CIA, created by the CIA, et cetera, whatever. But not to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think the technology has a lot of graces and blessings to offer humanity as well. But it's really important to notice these pitfalls and be aware of them. And so, you might find yourself getting in touch with that authentic creativity. You might find yourself getting in touch with your inner light and sharing it. And whether it's in your life or whether it's through social media or electronic forums, it seems like there are kind of these vultures that swoop in as soon as you start to get a little bit of headway. And it's like, oh, wow, I'm just trying to offer some love. Like, why are you attacking me? Like, I'm sure that's probably happened to some viewers here, right? Like, you open your heart to someone and you offer them a gift, and then they basically like spit on it in front of your face. And you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? I'm just trying to be nice and good. And like, why is that coming that way? Well, because sometimes that light is too much for that individual, for the narcissism itself, right? Because it thrives on the shadows, the darkness, the obscurity. And as people start to bring in this greater sense of light, it can threaten that status quo. So I like to call it the agents of the matrix, because it's very much like that concept from the movie. Anyone you know and love, particularly if they haven't done their own inner shadow work, right? If they haven't disconnected from the narcissism enough to be free of their own narcissism, then they are very easily a target to then target you by extension, right? So you're expressing all this love, and they're just like activated and triggered by it. They don't like it because it's going to start to show up their shadows. It's going to start to shine the light on their pain, and they'd rather not see it. They'd rather not deal with it. They'd rather deny it and just go on to work and have 10 cups of coffee and 20 beers at the end of the day. But then, you're sharing all this light, and some people, it just triggers that narcissism. The agents of the matrix come in and they swoop in and they start to gaslight and point fingers and blame and shame and ridicule and all these things. And so this is what the targeting looks like. As we start to up level in our life, the forces that don't really want this light, wherever they come from, can actually show up in ways that will actively try and disconnect us from it.
Absolutely. And, it's all really making me think about children, right? Because they are innately in their life force. It's the system that then shifts into dimming the light. And so why do we have things like excessive amounts of child abuse or pedophilia? It's really because those children are reflecting this beautiful creative, regenerative essence that is this mechanism of light that grows and grows and grows. And as you were saying, it's like the moth to the flame, you know, it's like, oh, I gotta get this, and I gotta see a bit of what it has. And I think oftentimes, because that has been perpetuated on us, like even like an adult, you know, then you move from a place of unconsciously siphoning that from a child because it's something that you yourself have lost. And you have a desire to retrieve it for yourself, but the mechanism that's in place for you to retrieve it is the exact mechanism which stole it in the first place. So again, this is why being aware allows us to work from a different new paradigm where we're not repeating the same cycle that we've been in for a very long time. We're taking ourselves out of that cycle, and then we can have children who remain with their compass, that remain in their life force, that we as adults realize they have so much to teach us. They have so much to teach us even about the things that we have lost through the dynamics that we grew up in. And they have gifts that they are bringing to us constantly, but we have to be willing to, move toward them with that love and grace and appreciation and recognition that their life force and them being in that state is beautiful. And any places in which we may have lost that ourselves is not a place to take from them, but to recognize and appreciate how they're creating that regenerative essence through themselves. Like we can learn that from the children.
Preach. That was great. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. That's a really excellent example. And I think it also dovetails really nicely into, the stream of our consciousness in this conversation in terms of codependency, right? Because that's basically what you just described is the codependent dynamic, which is another spoke of the wheel of the narcissist system, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have all these relationships where people are looking from the outside, craving from the outside, and then it perpetuates, the shadows and, everything else with it. So, the codependency shows up. I mean, gosh, how many non-codependent models do we see in the world? That's my question, right?
A handful of people I know.
Very few. That's it. Very few. And so, we get into the subject of sexuality and how this can be a big part of the targeting as well.
Absolutely, because sexuality is such a housing and a wellspring for life force. It is creative energy at its very base essence. So, and it also has to do with, you're having human relating in the mix of that, right? And then we have the spoke of codependency, which is oftentimes where we're jumping from in our human relating. So then you mix all those components together, and suddenly it's again a mechanism for taking rather than simply being and your own regenerative life force, letting it flow and experiencing that essence, being part of it and witness to it with a partner. That then it's a totally different experience than you owe me this. You owe me this sexual experience right now because I need your life force, girl. Why?
Oh yeah, that's like the date rapist's anthem right there.
Like why is Tinder successful? Tinder is successful because it's a mechanism of codependency. People are seeking outside of themselves instead of loving, appreciating, growing through and with themselves. And then it's like it's almost a selling process, right? An exchange of a take and give and take, which when you're giving, you're usually taking too. I mean, it happens in codependency, right? It's going both ways. And so it's like an exchange of your own life force, which is nothing but a drain. It doesn't allow the regenerative process to take place.
Because you're cutting yourself off from that inner source.
Exactly. Exactly. Merely by saying even I need this from someone else doesn't allow you to access it through yourself and to even get to know what that experience is.
And this is exactly what the system wants for everyone.
Exactly. Because if we're constantly in a state of exchange, then the system that's in play works, right? Like
Status quo, baby.
then you are a participant in the system rather than moving into a new paradigm. So when we're talking about like systemic oppression, for example, we have these 9-to-5s, right? And if you look at workplace environments all over the world, human rights are being sacrificed. It's as though they are to be bartered, which they're not. They are a birthright. And people are then agreeing because they feel that they have to, because they're in the system, to barter away their own rights. And what is also simultaneously being bartered away, because it is your birthright, is your life force, which is why we'll participate in these 9-to-5 type of jobs. 90% of us not enjoying what we do. That's like a statistic. 90% of us don't enjoy the profession that we've chosen to spend 40 hours a weekend. We come home drained. We come home lifeless to our family, to our partner, to our children, to our own well-being. And we're thus not able to, that's not regeneration. It feels
further drain.
It's exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's set up, the system's set up to drain and siphon. Drain, target, siphon.
And redirect. It's siphoning to redirect. So essentially, it's a siphoning and a redirection by something that is consciously and intentionally choosing what you're participating in vastly from an unconscious standpoint. So where you're not quite aware of the system and the dynamics, it is able more so to then take and then create from it. Because again, life force is a creative function. So it gets to choose what your life force does, rather than you choosing from your own soul's essence, which is for the highest, where your life force energy goes.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to be conscious about our life force and our intentions and where we're directing that energy, because we are the creators of our experience, right? It's not always easy to see or acknowledge that, because with the negatives that can come in, it might seem like we're a victim, but no, actually, it's just reflecting back to us those areas where we get to grow, where we have a blind spot, where we have some pain or something unresolved. And so it is, in that sense, also an opportunity, but it takes something to turn it into that opportunity and not just have it be more of the same siphoning.
Exactly. I do want to mention too, because it's another just a big area from my perspective, is the intentional attacking of creativity. If you're familiar with Brene Brown's work, she talks about creativity, and so many people report these, what honestly becomes a traumatic experience embedded into their psyche and system of attacks early on directly related to their creativity. For example, maybe someone said that your artwork was really shitty when you were a kid, and suddenly you stop making art. It is very frequently occurring that the source of creativity that is attacked directly relates to one's path and purpose, because it is this wellspring, and it's like, where's the life force exist of the most, right? We want to get as much as we can. So we're going to attack you in a place that actually has to do with your path and your purpose, to keep you away and fearful of your path and your purpose, which is why it's so essential to be willing to be with those fears. Like sometimes you have to push yourself really hard to go beyond the fears, because beyond the fear is actually your core essence. It's the thing that you are the most gifted at. And it hasn't yet been able to bloom. But once you allow it the space to bloom, it becomes more and more magnificent by the very moment, by the very choosing to be with it. And then you start to realize, oh, this is why I'm here on earth. Oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Oh, this feeds me. I can do, for example, a profession that enlivens me rather than drains me. The status quo is the drain and it's normalized, but that is not the intention of the universe. The intention, in your intention, is to be in your path, in your purpose, and let it grow. And from that wellspring, humanity in the collective, light expands. Praise.
Praise. That was so expertly stated, Ashtyn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to add actually a personal experience that came up. Is so poignant to your point, because I had thought about this prior. I know we talked about it, but it actually came in a whole new level as I was listening to you talk about it that I didn't even think about. And it's so true to illustrate, because, for example, right, when I was young, I don't even remember the memories, but I do remember a sense of being silenced, right? And I do remember a feeling that my voice was ugly or not good, or that I couldn't sing, that I had a bad voice, right? Like that's the judgment that I had acquired in my experience, wherever it came from. It doesn't really matter. Let's just give it, the credit to the narcissist. And so here I am at this point in my life now, having just come through a new cycle of a breakthrough where I'm coming to deeper levels of authenticity with myself and how I share myself with the world, being that authentic self rather than getting stuck in the narcissism programmings of needing to people please all the time, making sure everyone agrees with me, making sure I don't make anyone upset or cause any waves, because I'm disconnected from my own source, from that belief system, right? And needing to get the energy from the outside, versus coming to this breakthrough that I've recently been transpiring within, getting so in touch with that inner source that it doesn't matter if people approve or not, that it doesn't matter one way or the other how they respond, that it matters just because that's the truth of my being. It's like there's no stopping it from getting truly connected. And this has been a process over a period of time, but I've also been singing a lot more, especially in my car. I don't necessarily want to like start going on Broadway or anything, but just getting my voice to speak, to express myself, to feel free to be who I am. That's huge. And I think that's something that a lot of people really struggle with, because we are, again, disconnected from that inner source. And so we're looking for that approval. And it can be a huge pitfall to get caught into this sort of perfectionist paralysis of needing to, appease the world at the sacrifice of our true self, of our authentic self, and that creative self. Because we're not going to be creative if we're trying to be how we think everybody wants us to be. That's not creative. There's nothing creative about that, right? That's all contrived. So it's a really powerful practice to just get into authenticity. And in that sense, it's also embodiment and sovereignty too, right? Because it's like coming from the head into the heart, coming out of all the ego machinations and saying, no, what's true for my soul, my spirit, my body, what's going on inside, and moving from that place forward to create.
Yes, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your experience, because I know that is going to be so resonant for damn near everyone. I mean, I don't
think
know.
We all struggle with it, right? Honestly. We do.
Right. Yeah. So
it's the narcissism in action, folks. Here we are.
Yeah, I super appreciate you talking about that. And also, it really had me thinking about another area where attacking is so prevalent, which is disembodiment. It's to basically make us hate our own bodies, and also to not trust our bodies.
The whole medical establishment. I'm just going to say that. Put that right there. That's it.
That, and, you know, the media and how it's, you know, creating some non-human physicality, you know, with all of the fixing this, doing that, whatever, you know, zero, you know,
It's
whatever.
all artifice. All of it's artifice. Yeah.
Right. And then saying, hey, that's your new bar. That's the bar that you have to get to in order to be worthy or have value. Okay, how many people are a size 0? You know, like not many. And so it's going to continue to then perpetuate itself in your system as a self-hate mechanism because you're not reaching this expectation that was set outside of yourself and then perpetuated into yourself. And so, you know, oftentimes then that's when, like you're talking about the head, it's the mental loops.
Mm-hmm.
The mental loops and the dialogues, and they will play out, and then they will grow momentum and they will get bigger. And as that's happening, it's taking people up and out. Because if you feel of hate in yourself because the mental loop has gotten so big, this no longer is safe. And so then there's an escape going out here. But what happens then is that then the embodiment process isn't happening. We're not able to ground into our own experience. And that's where those siphoning mechanisms, these dynamics, can very easily steer the ship because we're outside of our sacred vessel.
You have just made so many zingers. Yes, sacred vessel. Exactly. Oh, so good. And that's where the up-leveling comes in, right? To move through that whole process, essentially, that we described. You know, it might not be every single step along the process. Maybe one day it'll be one here, one there, one there. But we've given a sort of general roadmap. And then ultimately, the goal, ideally, would be to transcend it all, right? To transcend it and come into that up level where we're like, you know what? No, I'm going to move through this fear. I'm going to move through this, whatever, self-judgment doesn't matter, right? And come to that new level of embodied light quotient where we're like, wow, I'm so authentic right now. Like, it's just like, and it doesn't even, it's not about, oh, like being authentic for others. No, you just feel and know within yourself that you are connected to that inner source.
Absolutely. And the thing about that up leveling, and it's by no means to place fear, right? But it is an experience that's pretty common that as you come into what you're stating as like a transcending, right? So like I view it as like a taking yourself out of a dynamic, and then you have a new way of being about you, right? And as you start to really experiment with that and put it into practical applicability, oftentimes there's some serious attacks that will come your way that will directly relate to whatever process you are transcending, whatever dynamic you're taking yourself out of. It's a retaliation of sorts, right? Your light quotient expands, and then something comes in to be like, no, you can't have that. We need you to be participating in this dynamic. You've always participated in this dynamic. We need that life force from you. And it can be really, honestly, sometimes it can be really scary. It can be really intense, the ways in which it manifests. But it's also, there's something comical about it.
They're like specialized agents of the Matrix. They come in specifically to target, right, exactly your weakest point. And so then you start to question yourself, oh my God, should I up level or should I just stay small? You know?
Exactly.
Never stay small. I mean, all right, maybe if you're not ready, but stay with the goal in mind. You know, it's worth it.
Stay in your own process, wherever you may be in that process. So as, you know, this attack of sorts occurs, why I was pointing to how comical it can actually be is because it's saying to you, baby, you up leveling. You're doing great. Here I am, you know? And because you are now with a new type of awareness, right? That awareness is with you. You get to choose. it's not like the attack that you might have had before. There might have been siphoning and it was kind of happening unconsciously. But now, because you've been going on your path and you've been going through this process, you have this new awareness. So as the attack then happens, you are so much more prepared to go, hell to the no. I am not doing that. Exactly. And then when you say no, see, it makes it easier for you to say no. That's why it's comical. They're trying to take you down, but it makes it easier for you to be like, that's not something I want to participate in, and then choose what is of the truest for you. And then as you do that, you pop through the other side of that portal. You have really up-leveled. That was the practical applicability. I'm not able to say this word today.
Applicability, it's a hard one.
It is. It just rolls off my tongue a little weird sometimes. But you're putting it into practice through your lived experience, right? Through human experiencing, and you're able to see the ways in which you've grown. And as you choose what is real and right and true for you, you don't subside or submit to whatever that attack is. You might have a little bit of wobble in you, like a little bit of a weirdness going on when you did it, but immediately following it, you will be absolutely amazed by your own brilliance, by your own beauty, by your own power. That experience is actually empowerment. And you're adding it to your repertoire of your being, and your life force goes, again, it's like that last full circle of sorts. It's really profound and really, really beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I would call mastery. You know, when you've transcended transcended, up-leveled your shadows, and you come to that new level, the new reality that you had intended for yourself, perhaps all along, and then there you are. You know, it's not usually easy, but it's always worth it.
Every time it's worth it. I say that it's the most consistent in all of living.
Nice.
So I don't know if there's anything else that you might want to add, Adam. I was going to talk about how we were going to try to follow this up with another video. But before then, if you have anything that you want to kind of end on.
I think we covered it. I think, you know, just I hope people get to see the opportunity for distinguishing these potential shadows or pitfalls as the opportunity to heal. You know, and one last thought about the mastery. It's like what you were saying, when you can laugh at it. There's actually a whole, you know, shamanistic tradition about coyote medicine and laughing at the shadows and the darkest, fearful things that we have, because laughter is joy, laughter is healing, laughter is liberation. And it's also helping us to take it a lot less serious and see the absurdity of it all. You know, it's like, wow, this is ridiculous. And to also see how powerful we were all along, right? It's like part of that recognition of saying, oh, wow, I'm not actually in danger here at all. I've been creating this whole thing the whole time. And so just being able to look at that, challenge the targeting, the negativity as the opportunity for the up-leveling, that's where mastery really kicks
in. Boom. Boom.
Boom.
Killed it.
I love making videos with you, Ashtyn. Let's make more.
Yeah, I really have enjoyed our time together, Adam, and you're such a beautiful human being and just a great friend. I'm so happy our paths have crossed.
Thank you. You know what I'm going to say? If you spot it, you got it. Little mirror there for you. So.
Thank you for that reflection. So as Adam said, we're down to make some more videos together. So we would really love to follow this video up with another, specifically about really what is regenerative life force? You know, how is that experienced? Also talk about what is sovereignty, because it's a really big key to that puzzle. And then talking about how to really be in and optimize that life force, like giving true examples and ways of going about optimizing your life force. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it should be a lot lighter. You know, it's going to be more inspirational. Hopefully there was some inspiration here too, but you gotta go through the muck, right? The lotus grows out of the mud. So we got to get the groundwork out of the way, and then we can really start to bloom. So stay tuned for the next video. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and to our highest potentials.
Yes, to our highest potentials.